Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 43, The March of the Executor Squad. The episode begins with Ash and the gang arriving at a local carnival and seeing all the festivities and all the numerous Pokemon, including a Ponyta, Oddish, and Chansey. The most exciting thing that Brock spots, though, is a whole bunch of beautiful girls, which causes him to blush immensely. Man, this guy just cannot stop blushing for chicks. Ash and Brock then dress up in outfits and start dancing. Misty and Pikachu are obviously embarrassed by this, as Ash and Brock look fucking ridiculous, man. So they decide to walk off and do some shit on their own, including a ride that involves riding a Ponyta and getting some ice cream, which Misty shares with Pikachu. Then, though, Misty spots a magician getting absolutely beat up by a girl, who is revealed to be his assistant, who is mad that he doesn't pay her properly. Fucking cunt. We're supposed to feel bad for this guy? I mean, he's not paying his employees. And thankfully, this woman kicks him to the ground even harder as he falls over and begs her to come back, likely being a useless bitch on his own, needing an assistant. The assistant storms off, though, leaving Misty to come out and question the guy if he was alright. The guy then gets up and explains that he was a magician named Melvin and had a dream of becoming a Las Vegas star. He insists that he can only do this if he has an assistant to help him. Fucking cunt, you're just gonna force them to do slave labor or some shit again. But he tries to convince Misty to be this assistant by pulling out little flowers and little flags. If that's supposed to be a measure of his talent, I don't know, man. I think every fucking magician on the planet can do that shit. But it's enough to convince Misty to help him for at least one day. So she agrees and gets dressed up in a Goldeen costume as she's taken to the magic stage. Thankfully, the people must know that this guy is both a cunt and a bad magician, as only like 3 people show up in the audience, which Misty is glad at, because she was expecting like Brock or Ash to show up or something, and that would be embarrassing for her, as she's wearing this fucking skimpy-ass outfit, which is another thing that's creepy against this magician guy. I mean, you're making little girls wear skimpy outfits. Brock and Ash then do arrive with popcorn, though, and they sit down to watch Misty perform, which embarrasses the fuck out of her. Ash then sees the magician pull out his Execute, which was his #1 partner for his first trick, and scans his Pokedex on it. The magician then does his first trick, which is simply just juggling an Execute. Like, how's that fucking magic, bro? Brock and Ash, along with the rest of the audience, are very unimpressed by this and start booing, leading the magician to try a second trick, which is to use a baton to make flames come out. After being encouraged by even Misty to do so, who thought it was boring, and she's supposed to be your assistant, bro. However, since Melvin is such a fucking terrible magician, the baton only spurts out little baby flames, which the audience isn't impressed by. So he tries again, and surprisingly, the trick actually works. I mean, I don't know what he did to make it work this time, but things still go shitty for him as the flame grows out of control, leading Misty to warn him to be careful and try and put it out. But the magician doesn't seem to care about everyone's safety, just super happy that his trick actually worked for once, and the flame causes the sprinklers to activate, and it just leads the audience to get even more pissed off, even though he actually pulled off a good trick, and they all leave and storm off, demanding their money back, and they trample him on the way out and throw shit at him. Once again, are we really supposed to feel bad for this guy? I mean, I'd be mad too if I got my clothes drenched all over and had to pay money for that. And this guy's a fucking cunt anyway, who cares what happens to him? The bad luck keeps hitting the magician, as immediately after he recovers from the beating he received, he's fired by the carnival manager. This causes Ash and the gang to feel sorry for Melvin, and they decide to go up to him and help him come up with some new tricks that he can do to wow the audience. But when Ash sees him moping around and feeling sorry for himself, being like, oh, I'm just gonna give up on my dreams, I fucking suck. He's like, dude, don't give up on your dreams like that, that's lame as hell. All you need to do is actually come up with some unique and interesting tricks that aren't fucking juggling or just throwing a little fire out, and then you'll be good. So he essentially switches from being consoling to being angry, and that motivator is enough for the magician, who agrees that he'll try to come up with some new original material. His Execute then smiles in happiness, happy that his owner was happy, but I think Execute is the only one who really cares about this guy's happiness. Let's be real. Meanwhile, Team Rocket were sunbathing on their balloon, plotting what to do next. What's there to plot, guys? Stealing Pokemon? Ooh, wow, what an elaborate plot. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang, they were watching the magician try out his new trick, which was to make flowers appear out of his baton. When he does this, though, the flowers appear all wilted because he fucking sucks, and he then gets in his head even more, stating how all he wanted to do was just be a fucking magician, but he sucks so much. Ash then gets up once again, motivating him to quit being a mopey bitch, and suggests a trick of his own. Being a magic box trick, a classic. And he then gets dressed up in a swashy outfit for this. It's unclear why he does this. I mean, what does that have to do with a magic box? But he essentially explains that the magic box can shoot out a variety of things, including elements, that each element corresponded to a hole in the box. Melvin then instructs him to make some fire come out, believing that to be the strongest element, and Ash taps on one of the holes, and fire does in fact come out, burning Melvin. Let's go! Ash then taps on another hole when Melvin requests some water to come out to cool him off, and water does come out, but going a little overboard as it completely drenches Melvin in the face. Misty, Brock, and Melvin are obviously in amazement at how Ash can seemingly actually do this, as we cut to inside the box, revealing the reason as to why there was holes in the box, being so Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle could be the ones to send out the elements. Charmander had sent out the fire from earlier, and Squirtle had sent out the water. The box was small as fuck though, so Charmander's tail actually ends up catching both Bulbasaur and Squirtle on fire, as he's too close to them, and this pisses off Bulbasaur and Squirtle, who proceed to fight Charmander, and there being a literal fight in a box that's like the size of your hand, obviously causes the box to break, and the 3 Pokemon to spill out. And Ash, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, along with Brock, Misty, and Melvin, be burned once again as a result, as when Charmander tumbled out, he tumbled out on top of them. With Ash's magic trick having failed, now knowing that he couldn't tell Melvin to use it, he tries to come up with another tip to give Melvin instead, which ends up being that he should ditch his Execute, as Execute didn't seem to do much during the magic show that he watched. But I mean, come on, Ash, you're telling a guy to ditch his partner here. Like, I know that I don't like the magician guy, but he shouldn't have to ditch his partner Pokemon just because they don't help him with his goal. But the Execute give him more than enough punishment for this statement, where he called him useless, as they hypnotize him. This makes Ash start grunting and moaning, leading the magician to tell him to stop, which Ash does instantly. Ash obeying him is what makes the magician realize that Ash was in fact under the Execute's hypnosis, and confirms that he is by making Ash act like a Bulbasaur and spin around in circles, which Ash also obliges with no problem. This obviously confuses Pikachu, Brock, and Misty on why Ash is basically acting like he's on some fucking drugs or some shit. But Melvin fully understands the reason why. Essentially, since Ash was under Execute's hypnosis, and Melvin owned Execute, Melvin was able to control anyone who Execute put under its hypnosis, which meant he could control Ash. This gives him an idea as he sneaks away from Brock and Misty, with Ash following him. The first thing Melvin has Ash do is essentially act as his slave and push him into the Leaf Forest on a cart, as Team Rocket watches in the distance, still plotting what they were going to do. Like, can you guys just make up your mind? With the amount that they're deliberating, they're obviously out of ideas because they've appeared so many times. Maybe that was time right then that Team Rocket should have been axed from the anime at this point. Meanwhile, Misty and Brock had realized that Ash and Melvin had disappeared, and had decided to go looking for them, obviously concerned. Pikachu then spots the tracks from the cart, and Misty realizes that Ash has been hypnotized by the Execute. Now, I don't know how she suddenly comes to this realization. Maybe after seeing the tracks, she was like, well, how would someone get pulled how would someone get pulled with tracks willingly? Like, who would willingly do that? So she was like, oh, Ash must be hypnotized if he was willing to pull Melvin on his cart. That's the only explanation I can think of, but regardless, this scares Misty and Brock as they now realize that Ash is essentially a slave to Melvin, and this just encourages them to keep following the tracks as fast as they can. Meanwhile, Melvin gets out of the cart as Ash and Melvin arrive at the place in the Leaf Forest that Melvin was looking for, the place that had a whole bunch of Exeggutor in it, which Melvin has Ash use his Pokedex on. Melvin's plan was essentially to capture the entire horde of Exeggutor in front of him and use their hypnosis, which was stronger than just one Execute's, to hypnotize everyone at the carnival into coming to his magic show. So basically, he was too much of a wimp to actually try and get good at something and just wanted an easy way out. Typical villain. He doesn't even acquire the Exeggutor on its own, as he orders Ash to send out his Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle, and have them all attack the Exeggutor, which they do, since they're under Ash's command, and Ash is under Execute's command, and Execute is under Melvin's command. Okay, you get the idea. But essentially, Ash's Pokemon absolutely wreck the Exeggutor, and Melvin manages to catch a whole fucking load of them, and commands Ash to return his Pokemon to their Pokeballs. Melvin celebrates, but his celebration is quickly cut off as Team Rocket finally show up, having made up their minds with what they wanted to do, stating that they wanted to steal all of the magician's Exeggutor that he caught and use their hypnosis to hypnotize other Pokemon, which would create a chain effect, just creating more and more hypnosis, and they would essentially have their own Pokemon army to control. Team Rocket then does their motto, which is more elaborate than usual this time, as it's their own version of a magic show, which actually has some impressive tricks, unlike what Melvin can accomplish, such as a disappearing door, and a disappearing cabinet as well. So they were just really showing Melvin up here. But he still claps because he's just so passionate about magic shows that he doesn't even care that he's being shown up right now. Team Rocket have used their motto as a distraction, as now that Melvin was so busy clapping, they took the opportunity to tie him up, rendering him useless to be able to do anything. But his Execute was still free though, and his Execute then suddenly evolves out of nowhere into Exeggutor, likely becoming jealous that its owner was giving all its attention to Exeggutors and not it. The Exeggutor then uses hypnosis and hypnotizes Team Rocket, much to their shock, which essentially makes them act like Exeggutor as well. Team Rocket had tried to look away from the hypnosis, knowing it would be coming, but they failed because every single Exeggutor was now using hypnosis, as they all were heavily influenced by Melvin's. All of the Exeggutors using hypnosis backfires on them though, as they all end up looking at each other while doing so, which puts all of them into their own hypnosis, so now they're all hypnotized, and walk off mindlessly into the town, trampling over Melvin on the way, when he tries to get them to stop. So I think the reason why they're all marching towards the town is because them all hypnotizing each other, it essentially means that if one of them were to walk forward, then the rest of them would walk forward type of thing. So even if one of them just takes a step forward, then they just keep going. I think that's what it was. Or the hypnosis actually is acting like a hypnosis and it's making them like mindless, so they're just like mindlessly marching. But either way, they were heading into town and almost trampled over Brock and Misty at this point as well, who had since followed the tracks to the forest, and were able to find Ash and Melvin's bodies as they were passed out, having been trampled by the Exeggutor. Pikachu then shocks Ash in order to wake him, and not only does it wake him, but it cures him of his hypnosis, so he's no longer under the control of Melvin. Melvin then becomes conscious as well, and informs Brock and Misty of everything they had missed while they were searching for them, and they all rush back to the carnival, aware that that's where the Exeggutor were likely heading towards. Unfortunately, by the time Ash and the gang arrive back at the carnival, they've discovered that the Exeggutor have already rampaged the place, destroying it, and had since walked past, but had reached a dead end, so were forced to turn around and come back. So that meant that they were just going to come back and destroy the remains even further. Ash and the gang obviously panic at this, but then the carnival owner, who survived the rampage, comes up to them and assures them that he had a plan for when the Exeggutor came back, being a time bomb that he had planted in the middle of the city to blow them up. Misty obviously freaks out at this, claiming that they shouldn't fucking blow up Pokemon, otherwise fucking PETA would be called. But the carnival owner doesn't care, simply running away as he sees the Exeggutor rapidly approaching the carnival once again. Ash and the gang then debate what to do, with Ash deciding to go in and fight the Exeggutor, so that he could defeat them before they reached the bomb. Everyone else tries to get him to stay back, as this is obviously foolish, but he's an anime protagonist, man. He makes foolish decisions all the time. So, Ash's gang, along with Melvin, just decide to follow him as he goes up to the Executor and sends out Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle yet again. Squirtle's water gun unfortunately does nothing but cool the Executor off, so they're actually happy with that. And then Bulbasaur's Razor Leaf does nothing but trim their hair, which I'd be happy with that too. That's a fucking sick cut. So Ash then just recalls Squirtle and Bulbasaur, telling Charmander that he was the only one who could do any real damage with his fire attacks. Charmander then uses those fire attacks, such as flamethrowers, and successfully manages to hit one of the Executor and keeps going, hitting multiple others. Ash congratulates it, as Charmander still persists, but eventually Charmander grows tired. Misty yells with concern that Charmander is being overworked, as Charmander passes out in exhaustion. Misty then panics, but then gets the idea to use Melvin. After all, he owned the Executor. He should be taking some responsibility for them, not Ash. But anyways, Misty advises him to use that crazy-ass flamethrower magic trick that he had that caused the sprinklers to go off, with Melvin hesitant to do so, whining again about how fucking bad of a magician he was and how he would likely fail with the trick. But he is eventually motivated to try it once again, as Misty points to Charmander, saying that if Charmander was willing to risk its life to try, then Melvin owed it to him to try his best as well. Seemingly as God's gift for Melvin finally working up the courage to try the trick again, Charmander miraculously recovers from its exhaustion and joins in with Melvin, who does successfully manage to pull off his fire trick using a flamethrower, and both Charmander and Melvin successfully burn all the Executor and Team Rocket, causing them all to run off into the forest, with the exception of one, being Melvin's Executor, who runs up and gives him a hug, now having free will again due to the fire canceling the effect of the hypnosis. That meant that the fire had canceled the hypnosis effect of all the other Executor as well, and they were just willingly running in that direction away because they were that scared of the fire. Meanwhile, the carnival owner's bomb does end up going off, but it thankfully didn't harm any of the Executor, or any of the citizens for that matter, as the bomb had been placed away from the citizens. Just then, Ash leans down to his Charmander and congratulates it for doing such a great job, when Charmander evolves into Charmeleon, its second stage form. Ash is so happy about this, and it goes to hug Charmeleon, but then Charmeleon burns him, being angry for some reason. I guess this is the start of a bad relationship between Ash and Charmeleon, huh? Ash then checks his Pokedex for information on Charmeleon and why it could potentially be angry as he and the rest of the gang say goodbye to Melvin as they leave on the next leg of their journey, reminding Melvin that he should never give up on his dream of going to Las Vegas. But let's be real, Melvin's not going to make it to Las Vegas even with that fire trick. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they were being trampled by all the Executor as they were still following them in an attempt to capture them.